Chapter 14. A Course of Action. Anselm stood across the table from Elastra, the woman lying between them breathing short, unnatural breaths. "Her eye is lost, I know," he was explaining to her. "But I think if we each use a second-degree hex, the combined power should be enough to revive her body and hopefully seal the wound." "You're learning well, brother," Elastra said, examining the woman's body as if examining a puzzle. "I suggest one of us uses mortal bind and the other, astral mending. Do you know those well enough?" He still did not feel quite comfortable calling upon a higher deity of the order, allowing them to take a costlier toll from the archives of his mind. Elastra was glad to lose the memories, so she could block out much of her childhood, and memories of their mother and father. He disliked his past just as much, but something inside warned him that he needed those memories. If he lost those horrible times, he could lose who he was. He squeezed at his records through his satchel. "Ansel?" Elastra asked, snatching him out of his thoughts. "I know them, yes." He recalled what his sister had said about taking risks back in the warden mess hall, and looked down at the beautiful woman that lay there before him. Mysterious. Frightening. Helpless. "Are you ready?" Elastra asked. Anselm took a deep breath and nodded. "Ready. No going back now." They held their hands over the woman, palms up, showing the scars from their warden commencement rituals. Both of their right-hand scars, the scars of the divine, glowed with a soft white light as they concentrated, feeling in their minds for the delivery of the power from the deity. Elastra joined her palms together, and her hands and fingers twisted into the hex formation, one hand on top of the other and the appropriate fingers extended or curled. Anselm did the same and focused harder. Their robes swirled upward as a gentle breeze radiated from around their feet. A white mist of light slowly encircled their ankles and expanded upward and outward until they were all three surrounded by an ashen cloud. He could feel the presence of Anais, the divine deity that governed the second-degree hexes. He could almost feel his eyes looking down on the woman through a window in his hands as he held them above her. "I will take care of the binding of her eye," Elastra said. "You, the astral mending." Anselm nodded again. The two of them were a channel, and pure energy surged through them, raining down upon the woman like a glorious waterfall of light. She closed her good eye hard, and she slowly opened her mouth wide and gasped in deep breaths of air. Her chest moved up and down as life energy poured around and through her, her dark hair plastered to the table in the turbulence. Anselm watched her, and for a moment he could somehow feel her inner vitals creak back to life as if awoken from a deep sleep. He focused with all of his might to maintain harmony with his sister's hex, which he could feel working furiously to repair the eye. He could feel his muscles twitching, and he hoped he could hold the hex for as long as was required. Suddenly, the woman's remaining eye shot open, beaming yellow in the midst of the white current encircling her. She took another deep breath, this time voluntarily, and began to cough. She was weak still, and lay there looking as though she were half asleep as Anselm and Elastra kept the flow of energy around her for several more minutes as it bound the last of her wounds and revitalized her body. The task was done. They separated and slowly closed their hands into fists, the white cloud quickly dispersing as they did so. The wind died down, their robes settled, and all was still. Anselm closed his eyes in the moment of silence, not only from weariness but to cope with the familiar feeling of being drained by a hex. A feeling like trying to remember something important he was just thinking of, or something he had to do but could not find it. The cost had been paid, whatever it was. Like always, he only found an empty hole of stupor. The two wardens leaned on the table for support, and the woman lay blinking her uninjured eye at the colorful diagram on the ceiling. Elastra held a hand on her forehead and stared at the floor, her hair draping down and hiding her face. Anselm had felt the large amount of energy and focus her hex had required to repair the eye. Anselm stared at the woman's other eye, large and beautiful, entranced more than he had been before. Before he could pull himself out of the trance, Elastra had marched to the door and let Caleb and Layla back into the room. He knew Elastra was far from relieved to see the woman recovered, and wanted to take every precaution possible for their safety. "Are you all right? How do you feel?" Anselm said in between breaths as the others cautiously approached. Caleb had his sword sheathed, though Anselm knew he was ready to strike out with it should the need arise. Layla was behind him but peering curiously from behind his arm. His sister's face was like stone, diplomatic as if she were ready to aggressively negotiate a truce of peace. It took a few more moments for the woman's breathing to slow its pace, and she turned her head to Anselm. "My head hurts," she said. Everyone immediately noticed the accent in her speech, a certain elegance that was unfamiliar to him and sang in his ears, leaving an impression like a footprint on his mind. She looked around at the wide dark room, and again at the ceiling artistry. "Where am I?" "You are in the city of Tritus," Alastra said matter-of-factly. "In the kingdom of Avondale." "Avondale?" she whispered to herself. In a moment she seemed to recall what had happened and gasped. With some effort, she pushed herself halfway up to a sitting position on the table and everyone flinched. Caleb's sword raised an inch but stopped when she did. She moaned and raised a slow hand to her covered eye, most likely expecting something far worse than the soft bandages tied across it. "You have lost your eye." "There was nothing we could do about that," Anselm said. "But we have healed you as much as we were able otherwise. You've been through quite an ordeal, have you not?" The woman took in his words carefully. Alastra eagerly posed to the point of Anselm's question. "Are you a shadow walker?" she asked. "Are you the dragon that stormed our city not 2 nights past? If you are, I should warn you that I am a sage, and you won't get far if you try anything." Anselm dropped his head into his hand at her directness and gave her an annoyed look. "At this rate we'll provoke her into attacking us." Caleb spoke for him as he stepped closer to the table. "You need not fear," he said. "You were greatly wounded in that battle, and we have brought you here to be healed. We wish to speak with you, not harm you. We wish to learn something if we can, in exchange for preserving your life. Will you hear us?" The woman brushed her dark hair aside, and followed the bandage with her fingers as it traveled higher on her head. She looked at Caleb. "So it was you," she said. "I thought it had been a dream, but it seems it was not." Caleb dropped his gaze to the floor. When they all remained silent, she coughed and shook her head. "Yes. I am Sartir, a shapeshifter. My name is Leothran Marley, and I thank you for what you have done in helping me." Her expression showed undeniable sincerity as she spoke, but suddenly melted into utter sadness. She sat in silence and swallowed hard before continuing. "I am indeed the dragon, as you say. I have done much evil here, and elsewhere too. I deserve to die, and yet you saved me." She sat all the way up and gave Caleb a small bow of her head. Her face was hollow and heavy with grief. It was then that she noticed the tunic and examined it curiously. Layla stiffened behind Caleb, but Anselm could tell his friend's mind was elsewhere. "Leothran," he said. "I am Caleb Rembrandt, captain in the king's royal armies. We fought the night Talgarth attacked us, and you took me away into the sky. Do you remember? I am the one who took your eye, yet even as I attempted to kill you, as you plummeted toward the mountains, you saved me, did you not? You caught me in your wing. Why?" Leothran again listened carefully, as if formulating her response in her head one word at a time. "I remember," she said with a sigh. Her eye gleamed yellow in the dark room. "When I went up into the sky that night, I was running as fast as I could from everyone and everything. That night I experienced something I have not for many, many long seasons, freedom. Even as I fell, my mind was in frenzy, but fortunately I was able to help you in what I suspected were my last moments. It was never my desire to hurt you, or any of the men defending this city." "Lies," Alastra hissed. Leothran looked at her but showed no trace of fear. "How can you expect us to believe that?" she spouted. "Do you have any idea how many lives you have taken?" "Ella?" Anselm snapped. Leothran's head dropped again. "Freedom?" Layla asked, stepping up from the shadows behind Caleb. "You mean you were a prisoner?" She had not been keen about the woman before, but Anselm could sense Layla's pity for her now. Leothran nodded. "Yes. A slave, to be more precise." Her words came slowly and were heavy with resentment. I have been a slave to the Talgothians for a long time now. But even my apologies cannot undo what has happened here. I do not deserve to live. I don't understand, Elastra broke in. How can we believe you? If you are a shadow walker and really are the dragon, why didn't you fly away before? Or better yet, why did you not incinerate every last Talgothian that pressed you to do their bidding? Sirtan, she said, her accent fitting the foreign word. 9 jewels in the common word. Her face was grim and her yellow eye burned brighter. Talgarth is very powerful. They say that Queen Tamara has communion with spirits from some other world. Anselm recalled King Roland's broken speech when he and Caleb confronted him at Grimhall. What is all this talk of spirits? He and Caleb exchanged a worried glance. Somehow, she continued, Talgothian wardens have gained the ability to produce these abominations, these enchanted relics, and are using them on their campaign to conquer all of the Estelans. They use them to enslave my people when they can. When one of these wardens performs the ritual and binds themselves to a satyr, they can control when and where we assume an alternate shape, regardless of the risks, as long as they wear the Sirtan. She closed her eye. Our free thoughts remain while we are bound, and our memories serve just as soundly, but our actions are not our own. I simply had to watch the destruction dealt by my own hands as Talgarth pulled the strings. It's been so long, fate has finally seen it fit to release me, though why I know not. Strike me down if you must. I will not resist. Despite her strong and elegant face, Leothran looked like she would weep, but she had a sudden fit of coughs instead. Elastra seemed to consider Leothran's proposal of execution, arms folded and pulling on one of her golden curls, but Anselm was not surprised when Layla crossed the distance to Leothran and put an arm around her, supporting her as she regained her breathing. Leave it to Layla to care for anything with even a scratch, no matter how dangerous it may be. Caleb looked as though he were going to say something to Layla but kept silent. Suddenly, Anselm gasped so loudly that everyone turned in his direction. By fate's name, it couldn't be. Without saying a word, he opened his satchel and pulled out a twined head circlet encrusted with many colorful stones that glinted in the light of the nearby candle, and held it up for everyone to see. Leothran made a hissing noise and moved as far away from it as she could, with Layla holding her to prevent her from falling off the table. Anselm nodded. It's as I thought then. This is a mind jewel, isn't it? What was it? Sirtan. Leothran was eyeing the thing, as if it was a poisonous serpent about to lash out. Where did you get that? She asked. Her eye was narrow and filled with a frightening malice. Easy. During the attack, my sister and I killed 2 Talgothian sages. One of them was wearing this. Even after he was burned into oblivion by my sister's hex, this thing remained without a scratch. I took it as a trophy, but apparently got more than I bargained for. Leothran looked at Elastra. She simply nodded, confirming the story. You cannot destroy it with hexes, she said. Or anything else my people know of. These things are of the utmost evil, spawned with the darkest of intentions. Please put it away. If you or anyone were to put it on, that person too would become bound to its treachery, and would forever be so until death took them from it. Please. I would have you give it to me, so that no one could ever use it again if I dared to touch it. Don't worry, Anselm said, replacing it to his satchel. It's safe with me. If you say it can't be destroyed, well then I'll keep it hidden here. Her eye was still glaring at the satchel. I promise, he said reassuringly. You can trust me. Reluctantly, she nodded. Caleb had been listening quietly, rubbing his chin in thought. I see, it all makes sense now, he said, stepping up to the table's edge and completing the huddle around Leothran. When I attacked you, it must have been the same time that Ansel and Ella killed the wardens in the castle. That's why you were suddenly able to flee. It appears so, Elastra said, clearly not liking the fact that everyone had gotten so comfortable around Leothran. The old crone wearing the circlet was trying to protect that thing more than his own life. And his hexes were not as focused or potent as I thought they would be. Anselm finished. So his concentration was occupied by holding you in place. It must have taken immense focus to hold that sort of a hex. If it even is a hex. Leothran nodded slowly, and felt her bandaged eye again. It comforts me to know that vile man is no more. They were all silent in thought when Caleb spoke again. I am sorry for your wound. Because of me, you'll never see from that eye again. Leothran carefully put her legs over the edge of the table, and accepted Layla's hand in assisting her off of it. She smiled faintly as she gained her footing and nodded, letting Layla know she was all right to stand on her own. There is nothing to apologize for, Caleb Rembrandt. You are a leader for your people, and were doing your duty in defending your home. It is I who must apologize, though it means nothing, and I would never expect pardon for what I have done. Now that she was standing, she suddenly appeared more commanding and elegant than before. The helpless wounded woman had vanished, and before them stood someone strong and able. She held her bandaged head high, her black hair falling behind her and her yellow eye shining in the shadows of the dark room. She tapped her forehead twice in the reverence to fate. Anselm found it interesting that the custom was known to her as well. May fate keep you all in his hands for your deeds. Now that I am free from the warden's chains, I would return to my people in the Esterlands and help them repel the advances of Talgarth. There is much calamity at work there. But not before I have corrected my wrongs and repaid my debt to you for risking your lives for me. I am a warrior of high regard amongst the Sartir. I stand ready to help in anything you see fit. Her accent made her words hard to understand at times, but they hardly noticed as she made her pledge. She did not look like a warrior wearing the light tunic to her ankles, but something told Anselm she was definitely capable in a fight. Anselm and Layla looked at Caleb, who now wore a determined expression. Tonight, Layla and I leave for the city of Shorewell in the southern kingdom. My father is waiting there with news of the invaders' plans. The sooner we find him, the sooner we know how to impede the enemy's next move. Leothran nodded without a second thought. Then I go with you. I am at your service, Caleb. And at yours, she said, signaling to the rest of them. I know the name of my rescuer, but not that of the man and woman who healed me. I am Anselm Flitchett, Captain Warden of Tritus, Anselm said, pride lacing his voice. As an afterthought he added, and this is my sister Alastra Flitchett, Sage of Tritus, as she said before. And she is Layla Starlehand, her father is a noble of the city and royal blacksmith. Leothran bowed her head to each of them. I am indeed in great company. I would be honored to go with you, and help in any way that I can. If your journey comes to crossing blades with the enemy, I assure you, I will not disappoint. Thank you. It's settled then, Caleb said. It will take us 2 days to reach Shorewell if we can ride at a good pace and take the highway south to Manon, an extra day if we have to veer from the road or are delayed otherwise. We leave tonight. Are you sure you can ride? He asked Leothran. I would rather have you stay here and recover your full strength than risk further injury. Leothran shook her head. The hexes of these skilled wardens have given me all of the strength I will need and more. I have seen many battles and fought through worse conditions. I go if you will have me. As will I, Anselm said, stepping forward. There is little more I can do to help here. And I'm not about to let my best friends ride across Avondale with all of Talgarth running wild on its plains. Caleb smiled. I was hoping you would come, Ansel. Your hexes and company will be most welcome. It was clear by Alastra's face that she was not used to dealing with so much new information at once. Are you all mad? She objected. You're going to allow her to ride alongside you? She was searching for the right words and shaking her head in frustration. I trust her, Ella, Caleb said. This could be a happy turn of chance, and allow us to gain an advantage over the invaders. It will be all right. Fate smite me, she said after a pause. I am going with you all too. Caleb smiled and nodded. Are you sure you are not needed here? Layla responded a bit too quickly. Sure, I am needed here, Alastra replied sharply. But it appears I am needed on the road to Shorewell also. My baby brother isn't a sage yet, and I'll need to make sure he doesn't do anything foolish. And I won't be letting a shadow walker or anyone else slip a dagger into you either, Caleb. She shot a defensive eye at Leothran. Anselm disapproved at his sister's blatant attacks. Though he too could not completely trust the woman logically, his heart ached for her cause, and without knowing why, he felt he would gladly help her achieve it. His own feelings about the traveling party were a double-edged sword. He was instantly grateful Elastra would be along, but annoyed at the higher rank that she effortlessly flaunted. "If we are all agreed, then we have no time to lose," Caleb said with a renewed vigor in his voice. "There is much to be done before we leave. The second quarter of the day is just beginning, so let's all get as much rest as we can while the sun lasts and gather our gear. I'll find some suitable horses and ready our provisions. We should meet again this evening at sundown." "We can meet at my father's forge," Layla said. "If we can have ready everything else before then, we can take what weapons we can find left there and be on our way." "Perfect," said Caleb, giving her a gentle smile. "At the Starlahand homestead then." "At dusk." "Leothran," Anselm said, clearing his throat. "You should do nothing else until you get some food and water in your stomach. And we will need to replace that rough bandage with something more suitable for your eye. And some proper clothing too." Leothran nodded, and looked curiously down at the tunic. Caleb quickly turned and headed for the door.
Thank you for listening. Subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Episodes go live every Monday and Friday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The audiobook can be purchased in its entirety on Google Play Books. Get the whole trilogy now in both paperback and ebook formats. All links are in the description.